It's not about me, not about my company. It's about understanding the others, understanding others' culture.
If you know somebody coming from indirect communication country, let's say India, other South Asian countries, and you need to interview for somebody who is Estonia, I don't know, Netherlands, Germany, build your answers very quickly, short, straight to the point, cut up the stories and so on to even get to the next round. Otherwise, it's just misunderstanding of the styles, how you communicate, not actually the skills which gonna play out.
When somebody starts working with us, they learn a little bit about how other cultures work or how other cultures behave at work. That's key.
So welcome to a brand new episode of the Nomad Summit Podcast. Today we talk about remote hiring, remote team culture, and I have some amazing guests with us. My name is Christoph Huebner, and today with me is my co-host Palle and our guests Renita Kasper and Miguel Piñas.
This episode is brought to you by Global Nomad Pass, the membership that rewards you with exclusive discounts when you support local businesses around the world.
Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself, Renita? Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm Renita, currently waving from here, from Berlin. I've been already 20 years in talent acquisition and hiring, building global teams, would be that Australia, Vietnam, let's say US, back to Europe, and constantly struggling that how we can do it better, how we can really build the best possible teams with this kind of global setup. I am also location free myself, and 3 years ago, I packed all my things. I'm kind of, let's say, fancily homeless now with my suitcase of 23 kilos, but can't be more. And it helps very much also for a minimalism lifestyle. If I want to, as lady, buy new stuff, I need to get something out from my suitcase first.
Exactly. I know the feeling.
And yeah, super fan of hiring, building communities, giving back to the community, and also promoting the nomad or remote distributed life. And maybe a little bit now also fight back what we have gained, the current, RTO vibe, what we experiencing globally.
That's a very interesting perspective that we will discuss with a remote employer, and that's Miguel. Introduce yourself, Miguel.
Hi, Christoph. Thank you for having me. Well, basically, I am the COO, Chief of Operations and co-founder of Companio. I've been traveling for, I don't even remember, more than 10 years. I started as a, let's say, digital nomad, but I kind of evolved into something more like slow traveler. So basically now I live between Estonia, Madrid, Spain, and Lisbon in Portugal. Remote working and remote teams was something that I was forced to deal with when the company was growing. Nobody taught me how to deal with teams, how to deal with remote teams. So I have to learn by experience, and it was like exciting, a challenge, sometimes very hard, sometimes very stressful. But here we are after 8 years of the company, and what can I say? I survived.
Look quite happy still.
Yeah. I'm in a good place now.
When we set up this podcast for today, it started with Renita, and I was like, there is someone I want to have on this conversation because it's the other side, because it's someone with whom I have regularly these conversations about learning about cultural differences, making jokes of different approaches to tasks given, and that's Miguel. So I'm pretty sure the two of you, Renita and Miguel, you can learn a lot from each other. Miguel, do you want to give us just a little example of where you were surprised about the reaction of staff to a task given, or how they completed the task, or how they work with each other?
Yeah, I would say the first one is kind of like a thing within our company, and we call it the you got to pay situation. So basically, it was one of my colleagues dealing with one customer from the United States. Super important, this fact. Mm-hmm. And apparently that customer has one pending payment, but this colleague sent her an email just saying in capital letters, something like, hello, you got to pay. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about somebody from East Europe sending an email to somebody from the United States. And as you can imagine, that person from the United States was furious about it. And ever since then, when we have a situation like that, we call it you got to pay situation. And we have learned a lot.
Can you explain why he was furious?
Yeah, because like in the American culture, like addressing a thing in such a direct and kind of like aggressive way is the worst. You have to be, well...
I hope this email finds you well.
Well, not like that, but more like politely explaining what's going on, what are the solutions, what the customer could do in a very friendly and positive way.
I've had the exact same experience.
Yeah.
I work with some American clients, and at some point I went, because I'm from Denmark, and we say what we need to say, but they said, oh, that seemed very, very rude, the way that you just said that.
Yes.
You could say, did you have a nice weekend, or something pleasant before going in, but I'm too direct, because that's just a part of my culture. But the Americans especially, they would like it to be very more polite in the beginning of an email. You can't just go straight to the point.
That's why I resonate so much with the Estonian mentality and culture, and come back here every summer. It's now my 8th summer in a row. I'm currently in Pärnu, in the summer capital of Estonia. And I really love this Nordic way of not sugarcoating things. Like, if you want something, you say something. The answer is yes or no, not dancing around the topic. But Miguel, as a Spaniard, is coming from a very different background there as well, but also has this strong connection to Estonia, and the company that he's talking about, Compagno, is incorporated here in Estonia and helps people to set up their business through e-residency. So I guess for you, Renita, coming from this culture and venturing out into the world and bridging gaps between other and different cultures, that was probably a long or an interesting learning curve for you as well. How did that all start? How did you get into this?
Yeah, exactly. And if I would know or learn a little bit more about cultural intelligence back in time, I think it was 2000s when I moved to Portugal, and probably was one of them tourists there. And I actually felt so bad about, everything very close to me. I mean, people wanted to touch me. They wanted to even kiss me into my cheeks. I mean, we need a space, 2 meters or 5 meters. I said, okay, why are the people coming so close to me? Why, somebody touch me in a dinner table? It's inappropriate. Do they have their own wives? They most likely do, is it? And I had like huge, this kind of physical pain. And also the time, Miguel, you can film it here, like, Estonian grandmothers also always taught that you always go somewhere 15 minutes before. You always prepare to something. And then I'm like already somewhere waiting. Is it the meeting? Is it the meetups? And people are, not coming there. They don't even let me know. And then arrive 20 minutes later with a smile and said, what's your problem here? Yeah. But I think throughout, let's say, company perspective, my first job was actually leading remote team in a startup in Berlin, when every single person from my team was from different country, have different background. And this was actually first time for me when I actually get this kind of setup. And first day, I heard somebody in the team saying, hey, look, the team is not functioning at all and everything is so bad. And then when I asked more questions, the things was around very human stuff. Somebody who just relocated from Spain, for example, said, oh, I don't know about those locals. They don't like me at all. Nobody asked how my weekend was, or, asked me to lunch or after lunch or something. They just come, sit there, say, hey, I'll start working. And ask very rude questions, no any kind of intros and so on. And I thought, okay, but this other guy she was talking about looks like a German guy, could be Estonian, could be somewhere else and that's so. And then I thought, okay, the translation is needed or adaptation is needed. And future going forward, I've been working very different distributed remote companies, like also Tesla in Estonia, which we eventually were in the 43 different countries. Understanding how important is actually this kind of little human things to understand us better and bit, translating, understanding and not assuming things. You can also take example, let's say German culture, or lots of work for German companies, and now South Asian culture. They very often come out like very blunt, very direct, as you say, Estonians might be. Now I've learned that. And I can switch it on and off, but sometimes I still, as an Estonian, forget that, especially if I'm getting a little bit stressed out and something is, we need to go, we need to do that. Going in some 101s and say, hey, let's start to do that. And it was actually impressive how one of my Southern European team member, who were doing 101, just look at me and that. I said, hey, Ranita, how's your family is doing? And I was like, oh, smash. He got me. I think it's a learning and you're getting better and better, and the lived experiences help, of course, to get better. But very often we haven't really in the companies built any systems around that to help our people or people who don't have so much experience on that.
And that's a very interesting point. There are now two levels to it. The first one is that as an individual, you become aware and want to learn about that. So that's something where every single listener here can start. And I think, Miguel, you have several times mentioned an interesting book that you always recommend. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's also part of your onboarding process, that you hand out this book to people, right?
Yeah, completely. The culture map changed our way of dealing with this. At the beginning, we were trying to kind of standardize the way everybody was working and interacting with the others. That was a completely mistake. And then after reading this book, we learned that the most important thing is not about me, not about my company, it's about understanding the others, understanding others' culture. So for us, as Renita was saying, learning and making sure when somebody starts working with us, they learn a little bit about how other cultures work or how other cultures behave at work. That's key. And for me, again, it's not about me. It's not about my culture. It's about just trying to understand others' cultures a little bit, right? And kind of adapting the way I work so the others feel comfortable as well, right? It's just about tiny little things at the end of the day, And it's, again, I completely agree with Renita, it's on a personal level.
So we will make sure that we'll put a link to that book into the show notes. But before I come to the second level, what Renita mentioned, establishing a culture, establishing processes in a company that deal with this topic, I would like to hear a bit more, Miguel, about your failed attempt to standardize communication. I mean, I imagine now that you were setting up rules to find a compromise in sugarcoating and being direct. So you wanted people from, let's say, Spain and the US and other cultures to be more direct, and got the Estonians to put a little bit more sugarcoating, or how did you try to standardize this?
Well, I would say, first of all, again, just do a basic training, explaining to anybody who starts joining the team about the other cultures. That's pretty basic. Second thing, I would say, I try to encourage everybody to ask something like, hey, would you feel comfortable if I give you like a direct feedback before giving the feedback? So that person gets ready for that. You know what I mean? Also, I am becoming in this matter some kind of like Estonian-ish because in my part of my job is dealing with that part of the team, or most of my time I'm just dealing with the team who is in Estonia or in East Europe. So I'm used to give more direct feedback right now. But what's happening now is I need to make an effort when dealing with the team who is based in Argentina and Brazil. So how do I do this? Basically, again, just asking that question and asking how do they feel. Like that question about the family is super important. Like, how was your weekend?
How's the dog?
Yeah. And for example, something happened to me the last week and I didn't pay attention. I forgot about it. I was attending a meeting. The meeting just started and somebody from Brazil arrived late. And I just say, hey, you're late. I just gave him that super direct feedback, like, hey, you're late. And so I should have made an effort, you know. But yeah, again, it's making an effort and understanding the others. And another very important thing for me is not just about feedback, it's also how to deal with confrontation. That's super important. And that's really, really different depending on your culture. Renita was mentioning Asia. And I also have like kind of like a story about a manager who was from Malaysia and he couldn't manage confrontation. So when he's got somebody in front of him who is giving super direct feedback, and who knows how to fight for something, he's going to say yes to everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's based on my experience, right? Again, this is maybe it doesn't work like that for other people or other companies. But if you have like a manager from, let's say, Indonesia, Malaysia, and in front of that person, you have a team from Estonia or Germany, they're going to eat that person alive. Like, that's not a very good combination. Because of that, because of the way they deal with confrontation, right? Of course, if you train that person and you just tell them a little bit and they learn how to deal with that, it's going to be better, right? This seems like a little bit like a joke, but this happened to me, honestly.
Yeah, that leads us directly to what Renita is offering, like establishing systems, establishing workflows, and making things happen. So how do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's something, as you already started, that there is a plan of bringing cultural intelligence into the systems and see that all of your systems in the company are actually culture proof or help out to that kind of conversation or let's say collaboration happen. Because if you, example, have a team which have participants, let's say you have few people from India, a few people from Vietnam, somebody from US, then you have Estonians and Germans, and maybe let's add a few Italians. We all love the diversity, but diversity always like works if it's intentional and then, you know, there is some system and plan to support that, because otherwise it is true that homogeneous teams work better because it's easier. Of course, it's easier if you like talk like me, walk like me. We have, you know, the same background and grandmother stories. I don't need to put so much intention and effort there to explain something. But in that kind of setup, I haven't thought about English can be something. Okay, we all talk English, but in also the words can mean totally different things. It's something I think it means in Estonia is maybe totally different in like how people perceive it in India or in Vietnam or Australia. And it even comes to that how you build values in a company and any kind of systems. Was it be, like you mentioned, Miguel, feedback system, performance reviews, meaning using this technology there. And then let's say we didn't teach anybody or like train anybody. And now, just example, the German manager gives performance review somebody in South Asia. Might happen that we broke this person like for good. And it's probably a guy somewhere out there thinks that they will be fired us up and the motivation is gone. And the other one, and other side, just thought that they are just, direct to point and help out their team members. Therefore, I think the cultural intelligence should be built up in every system you build in a company. Starting with hiring, seeing, okay, who we are, how the team is set up, where we're coming from, what is the strengths of our background, or let's say communication styles, direct or indirect communication. How many of these people we need in one team, and when it's already unbalanced, the team cohort, what we want to achieve. Same in a feedback system, same in performance reviews and so on, that we always watch everything we build kind of on that perspective. And I think one, maybe last, this kind of add-on, I think very often I see we build these systems based off headquarters, this kind of main influence or main language or main culture perspective. And then we just distribute it to those teams all over the globe. And we say we're global, or rather not, we're pushing the system to people, not doing actually really co-creating exercise. Asking, as Miguel, you said that how they feel about it, how they perceive something already in the creation of the system, rather than, okay, this is your values, this is your feedback system, and now try to deal with that.
Time for a quick break and a shout out to the sponsor of this episode, Global Nomad Pass. If you're a digital nomad, you know the struggle. Trying to avoid tourist traps, finding local hidden gems, and paying full price for co-working spaces and fitness studios. What if you could get authentic local experiences with exclusive discounts, all from one simple pass? Global Nomad Pass offers exactly that. For just $79 a year, you gain a digital membership accessible via Apple or Google Wallet. That unlocks up to 50% off at over 500 hand-picked local businesses across 25 plus cities. Think local cafes, restaurants, gyms, hairdressers, bars, accommodations, even local experiences, scouted and vetted by real locals to guarantee authenticity. It's a win-win. You save money, discover hidden gems, and support local businesses wherever you go. If you want to learn more about Global Nomad Pass, then listen to episode 7 of the Nomad Summit Podcast, where Christoph talks to its founder, Safir, and a cafe owner in Bansko. Find out more on globalnomadpass.com. And by the way, as a Nomad Summit Podcast listener, you can get an exclusive 30-day free trial, no credit card required. And then you'll get an additional 25% off when you upgrade to the annual membership. We've dropped the link for you as a Nomad Summit Podcast listener to unlock the free 30-day trial. And now, back to this week's episode.
Anita, we are now all aware of the differences and the topics that we need to think about, but give us a practical example. Let's dive deep into, let's say, the hiring process, as this is probably very interesting for many of our listeners who want to land their first or their next better remote employment. Where in this process can a system be established that helps everybody?
Yeah, great question. And in hiring, both sides, is it the employer or let's say, do you want to have a job in, let's say, a remote company? You can always check in who is hiring, where is the headquarters, where are they coming from? Do the due diligence on that what kind of setup mostly these people are coming from. What is the background that you can easily find out if they are somebody who present, let's say, individualism or collectivism understanding of work, or if they're coming from direct communication or indirect communication. Because, for example, if you know somebody coming from indirect communication country, let's say India, other South Asian countries, and you need to interview for somebody who is Estonia, I don't know, Netherlands, Germany, build your answers very strictly, short, straight to the point, cut up the stories and so on to even get to the next round. Because it's just misunderstanding of the styles, how you communicate, not actually the skills which gonna play out. Just one practical point here.
So that's from the perspective of the person applying. So the takeaway is, if you apply at a company, find out about the cultural background of the company as it is already, and especially about the person who you're dealing with. And now, from the other perspective, when I'm putting myself into the shoes of let's say a small remote team, let's say we are 5 to 10 people and we want to grow internationally and fully remotely. What can we do to make sure that our next hiring processes, especially when the goal is international diversity, go well?
Yeah, I think first, why is very important, why we want to do something, and understanding what is the current team setup, what strengths you already have, what strengths you're missing, because all those people coming with, strengths and weaknesses, and the best team we can build if we use everybody's strength rather than weaknesses, and the team is balanced, that if you already have, let's say, 3 people from, let's say, very individualistic, straight communication countries, maybe you would like to actually diversify from different thinking and approaches from different type of culture and communication. And there is lots of other variables that we can play with. But then you need to also train the interviewers, train the teams to understand that in the hiring process, we actually not biased against that, because it's natural. Somebody talks now very differently from me. I need to make an effort. But if the team or recruiters or whoever hires are already trained and prepared to them, we can catch it. Okay, this is my own brain who's not saying that I can't understand, but I need to make an effort, because we need that kind of, diversity of, let's say, different thought and backgrounds in our team.
Very interesting. So this is, again, like in the head of this individual person in the hiring process. You've been talking a lot about systems, building systems for intercultural communication. How would such a system look like?
Yeah, the system would look like start on hiring, but everything what you build there, let's say how your recruitment software, is it really inclusive to everybody, all the communication there? Is it inclusive and understandable to all the candidates you want to hire globally? Or you build it again, view of them headquarters or view of own background? That get the feedback from also all of those countries to see that what they think of, some testing group of that. Then let's say next one is onboarding, to say how people in those countries want to be onboarded. As Miguel says, ask them, how do you feel about it in process? Is it understandable? Do you have questions and so on? Going to the, performance, going to the training to leaders and giving everyday feedback. This is all you can build in on that kind of perspective, that how we talk with others, do we take in consideration that are different than us. Let's say you can create training and awareness, but then need to be process of what's the strategy, what is action we take as a team, and how we then reflect that, are we successful on the system or not. But I would always say that we need to get the other perspective in, because very often we don't. We just, throw systems on people and then surprised that it's not working. You get a laptop in, let's say, San Diego, and they expect that you are now part of Estonian startup and you share our mentality and values day 2 when you start.
Miguel, people from how many different countries are currently working at Compagno?
10 different countries.
Of different continents as well, I understood.
Yeah, we have people from Asia, Europe, South and Central America.
Do you currently have open positions? Are you hiring?
We were until the last month, but we are just growing and we are a very dynamic company. So we don't have currently, but probably we'll have at least one during the next month.
Do you want to give us a little insight how your last hiring round went? What were you looking for, and what was the diversity among the applicants, and how did you choose in the end?
It's kind of tricky. When looking for somebody, right, you usually are searching for certain qualities, right? Like, let's say you're looking for an accounting manager. So you are expecting this person to know a lot about accounting, maybe laws, etc., right? But now I also consider values such as, I don't know, communication, persuading, leading, trusting, the disagreeing, like how to deal with disagreement, etc., right? And based on that, certain countries are more suitable for that. It sounds too bad, right? But it's true. And then at the end of the day, that person is going to be, I don't know, from Estonia or from South Africa, and that person is going to have all those values. But when I start looking for somebody, I start looking within that area of countries that are more suitable for those values that I'm looking for.
So I guess now with all this cultural awareness that you've built and learned over the last couple of years, if you're, let's say, looking for a strong leader as the next hire, and you have an applicant coming from a country that is more soft, more indirect communication is predominant, then you probably during the hiring process ask different questions and address this topic directly. I mean, of course, there are individuals from countries where it's rather indirect communication predominant, but they are still very strong leaders. And if that person applies to your job, I guess you have a different conversation with them, testing a bit more about their skills in intercultural communication, right?
Yeah, and also depends on, if we're talking about a manager, where his or her team is from, right? So it's not just about, hey, I'm looking for a very strong leader. I want like a manager who is going to be very tough with everybody. So depending on where that thing is based on, the process is going to be slightly different. But in any case, I always try to figure it out during these conversations, during the process of hiring somebody. I always try to understand how that person is going to deal with disagreement, how this person is going to give feedback, how this person is going to receive feedback. Like, it's not very complicated. It's just about 3 or 4 things, but you just want to have like a small hint about that, right? Like, you just want to know that as soon as possible, right? Because that is going to create some problems at the end of the day if you don't know in advance, or you try to make the onboarding as soft as possible or as smooth as possible for that person. So knowing that in advance is key for me. It's not like a very complicated. It's just think about that. Usually during these selecting processes, most people just ask about technical questions like, how do you know about this? What was your experience on this? How many years? Things like that. Just try to incorporate this human part within the interview, and I think that's it.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that Miguel goes in the right path on that, because diversity for diversity's sake is not also valid, that the team need to be ready to actually take these people in, also successfully onboard and support them. And I think you're right also that we very often, especially in technical positions, going into the deep skills and understanding that part. But most likely when, the path go in a different ways, it's not the skills, it's actually the communication, the human interaction, how the team actually, comes together. And there normally, I think the problem lies. And if you go more deeper into that, or also describing that this is actually our team, this is how we communicate, this is how we function, maybe those are our team agreements and norms, and see what they are done or how they do it normally in their teams. Let's say also describe a feedback system, for example, that if you're very blunt or direct on that, and ask this other opinion on that to see that if it fits or not. And I think Miguel also like how somebody, for example, as a leader would give a constructive feedback to somebody, because there are also lots of things like that some of them never can, or it's, this never ending sugarcoating, which not leading anywhere. How those kind of things work out. Therefore, I think you in a very right path to dig deeper on those questions. and have like a balanced interview. That one thing is the technical skills, other things are all those kind of, human skills, because at the end of the time, they all need to be capable, work as a team.
Mm-hmm. And this is a really great conclusion of this conversation today, which is just covering the tip of the iceberg. We will go deeper with the Nomad Summit Remote Work Edition in Estonia. And if people until then want to reach out to you, Miguel, Renita, what's the best way to get you?
LinkedIn works.
Yeah, same here, LinkedIn.
Perfect. We'll add the links to your LinkedIn profiles into the show notes. Thank you very much for joining today's episode of the podcast. And to all the listeners out there, hear you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Produced by radioguru.co.uk.